Welcome to Living by the Mantras. I'm your host, Colleen Souza, with my partner and co-host,
Brian, Souza, great to be here with you guys.
Great to be here today. We are here to talk about different things that we find in my book, Living by the Mantras, Common Sense Wisdom for an Extraordinary Life. And we're glad you joined us today. We are in the last and final little segment on choices, on making choices. And this particular episode is the responsibility and consequences of choices. And yeah, they really, really are. So, as we've talked through the power of choices and being mindful with our choices, the bottom line is when things go really, really well, the consequence of our choices are a good and positive and encouraging thing. But when we make choices that don't necessarily turn out the way we'd hoped or turn out badly, we have to face the fallout of those decisions, the consequences. Usually consequences it's looked at as a negative term.
Negative connotation.
Yeah, negative connotation. Connotation was the word I could not get into my brain right there. Yeah. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And is it always bad? So as leaders, and that's a lot of, in the book, it's told through the allegory, if you will, of us raising our family, but it's also told through the allegory of me being a classroom teacher, Brian being a business owner. And in any role that we play in leadership, we have the role to help those we are leading understand consequences. And it's really hard as a parent. We want to fix things. And I think that is probably one of the biggest downfalls of parenting in our modern society. We want to fix things. We want to take away the owies, owies, not just physical, but like, oh, my kid is so unhappy because they don't like the consequence of that. Too darn bad. When I was raised, we like to watch a lot of stuff that's out there on the
Gen Xers.
The Gen Xers. If you go out and do a search on that, it's kind of funny to watch all the little AI cartoony things that are being made. But when we were raised back, those of us who were born in the mid to late 60s through, and were raised through the 80s, we had the consequences of the skinning our knees or getting grounded or getting that spanking or losing something or whatever it was because of a choice that we made that was probably not a very good one. And that was valuable. I became who I am. I know.
Absolutely. It's like iron sharpens iron, right? So kind of at those days, back in those days, when you made a choice, you lived by your decision, right? It wasn't changing opinions or worrying about whatever. You took personal responsibility for the fact that you skinned your knee. It wasn't somebody else's fault.
Well, and if you mouthed off at a teacher or did something at school,
you got in trouble more at home than you did at school.
You absolutely knew you weren't going to go back and tell your parents, well, the teacher's going to get mad at me because your mom's going to be like, and they should. And now I'm mad at you too. Instead of let me take care of it for you, honey. We're not going to let anybody yell at you. So it's consequences are valuable because they help us understand why making good choices is critical. So Brian, start with just kind of defining. You had a good little definition that you put together on consequences and exactly what they are, because I think that it was
consequences are what happens next. That's cause and effect in real life, and no sugarcoating. Actions actually ripple out, and they could be good or bad. So the consequences could be a reward, but consequences could be a demerit. It could be something else. 3 main points are: number one, when you're trying to teach the idea of consequences, is you need to make sure that there is immediate. Kids learn faster when they actually have immediate feedback. And the classic example of this is touching the stove. Why is that important?
Well, yeah, because if they touch the stove, they're going to burn their hand and they're going to get an immediate burn and they're going to know, ow, that thing's hot. I'm not going to touch it again.
So as far as parenting techniques go, in today's modern world, don't touch the stove, don't touch the stove. And we're going to put like safety things all around, the knobs and everything, so they can't touch the stove. We'll put covers over the stove. And back in our day, it was, well, if you touch the stove, you're going to burn your hand. And as kids, we went over there, we touched it one time, we burned the hand, and ouch, but don't want to do that again.
Well, and I think a good example in a modern, something that we've dealt with a little bit, and our youngest, who is going to be 21 in a couple of weeks, is home for her spring break, okay? And so she's here hanging out. She brought her best friend with her, and we have a water feature on our pool. And Brian likes doesn't mind that it's on. It runs power, and electricity is a ridiculous expensive thing. We live here in California, so it's a very ridiculous expensive thing. But he doesn't mind that she has it on. But then, like 2 hours later, after the sun's gone down, it goes outside.
At like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, when she's in like another room upstairs and the pool is still on.
He walked out and the pool is still on. But the consequence, and here it goes back to the stove and protecting things. Every light switch in our home has an auto shut off. If it doesn't have an auto shut off, it has one like the sensor, when you walk by a sensor and the light automatically goes on or goes off. We all know that. We also have these ones where you walk in and if you push a button, the longest timer is 30 minutes. And then it goes, there's like 5 buttons, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. So even if you're just walking in the room and you smack one of the buttons, you walk away in our house not turning things off, because they're going to go off automatically. We go to bed at night in our master bathroom. There's only 2 lights in there that are regular switches. And so we know everything's going to go off. So you can crawl in bed and know within 5 minutes, it's going to be dark. Okay. So one of the consequences is that our 21-year-old is not as used to being conscious about turning things off, because we've made life too damn easy for her over the years. And so I chuckle and I tell him, when she gets her own home coming out of college here, and she has to pay the power bill, she'll start thinking about turning things
the
off.
consequences will be a lot different. I'll take the phone remote control, put the pool away from her and say, hey, when you're paying your own bill, your consequences will be.
She'll think about those things, but that's a consequence and that's kind of goes back to, we put so much protection because technology allows us to now.
Which brings us to point number 2.
So they don't really know. And so unfortunately, they get a little spoiled in that regard.
So point number 1 is make sure that feedback is immediate. Point number 2 is let them feel it. Let them feel it. So don't rescue every mess. Natural fallout, a lost toy, let it be lost. It sticks way better than I told you so lectures.
Yeah.
So think about that.
Well, I mean, since we're picking up poor Grace, she's going to listen to this episode and go, thanks a lot, Mom. She has her car. She drives her car. She goes to school down at ASU. And in Phoenix, they have, in that whole Phoenix area, they have cameras and these little flashlights. And if you're speeding, they catch you. And about a week before she got home, traffic ticket arrived. She'd been speeding and it caught her. And the crazy thing is, it takes a picture of the driver. So there's no doubt that was our daughter.
The driver, multiple angles.
There's 2 things. There's 2 ways we could have handled that. We could have handled it by saying, she's a college student and, we expect her to pay for a lot of her own things. She's stretching. We'll just pay this one for her. She hasn't gotten a bunch of them, so why not pay this one? We didn't. We chose door number 2, which was sitting right on the counter. And after we chit-chatted with her for 15, 20 minutes, we're like, oh, by the way, that envelope right there is for you. And
here's your $300.
She opened it up and it's $225, but $225 to a college student,
it's a lot.
That's a couple shifts at work. She's going to pay the ticket. Why? Because the consequence is real.
Feel it.
And she'll be a little smarter, so she won't get another one. So
that's point number 2. Point number 3 is tie it to a choice. Show them that you pick this. Since you picked this happened. Since you did this is the consequence. Give me an example of that.
Give me an example of that. Since you chose to press the accelerator, you get to pay a traffic ticket. But there's lots of those.
So it goes back to the idea of ownership.
Well, last night, since I'm on the pick on Grace thing,
we'll go for a triple on Grace.
We're going to go for a triple on Grace. She's fresh on my brain because she's here. We went out to dinner. We were celebrating that she was here, some stuff in our life. And we went to a fairly nice restaurant here locally that we hadn't been to, that one of her friends works at. She's like, let's go see. And so we went, and she used to work, her second year of college, she worked at a very fine restaurant
place,
down in Phoenix on Camelback Mountain at an exclusive resort. So the restaurant she worked at, the food was, we got to visit it once. It was off the charts.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. And so she ordered something that she would have ordered at that restaurant. It was a fish dish that was just really out of the ordinary for something she would order. But she remembered liking sea bass so much at the Phoenician that she decided she would order it here. And she picked Dad at all dinner. And Dad and Mom ended up, we both ordered
I had
steaks.
the ribeye and my whiskey, and I was happy camper.
Yeah, well, I had a very good steak, but I didn't think the sea bass was too bad. But you could tell the choice she made.
Yep.
And she kept saying, why did I choose this? why did I think this was going to be like the other one? So I ended up I thought it tasted fine because I didn't have anything to compare it to. So I gave her half my meat and she gave me half her fish. And that was an immediate, well, think about that choice next time. Don't compare things that way.
Taking ownership and responsibility.
And she was immediately grateful. She was eating it, even though she didn't really enjoy it because we were paying for it. And I appreciated that. So I immediately said, well, think about those choices next time, because that's just life. Whether it's something as simple as a dish that we choose for dinner or a traffic ticket or a bigger life event, it's important to understand those consequences. And
let's shift that to a business aspect. Right now.
Okay, go for it. Do that. Yeah.
So think about it, whether you're a manager or you're an employee, you all have choices that you are making, and the feedback that you need to get is always immediate. I can tell you this, as a manager, you definitely want to criticize in private and compliment in public. It's very, very important to do that. I think so many times managers, they do the opposite. They criticize in public and they compliment in private. When you lead by example, which I think we're going to be talking to next, is people will follow. If you don't lead by example, people won't follow.
Yeah. And I think it's just very, very important. As leaders, we have to allow individuals who need to grow to experience that. And we need to do it with understanding, that's for sure. That's kind of where Brian was headed with there. Sometimes we get into a position of leadership and power, and then all of a sudden we really want to take that to the next level because we've worked so hard to get to that position of power. So we always like to encourage any leading that we do that, remember what it was like to be in the trenches, to be the new one. But nonetheless, it's important to find a way to help people understand, and not to necessarily chastise them, but to help them understand the consequences. If it's in sales and they lost a sale, then having a conversation about what choices did you make. Sometimes it's just about a client choosing not to work with you. We get that all the time, right? And that's fine. If they didn't choose us over somebody else and we were being true to who we were, then that's okay. We weren't the right match. But if it's because of something that we did and a way that we presented whatever it is that we were presenting, then we need to realize, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, or that probably offended them, or whatever. And it's important as a leader, if we see that consistent choice making, that we help re-guide it and point out, like Brian said, the consequence. Well, the consequence is that you don't get to eat next month because you didn't make any money, whatever it is. But it's very, very important. And that's the other piece of that, though, is the blame game. And I think I want to transition to that, because there's the consequences, but then there's also placing blame when things don't go the way that you wish they had or you think that they should. Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit.
So basically what that boils down to is lack of ownership, right? It wasn't me. I didn't do it. Why am I responsible for that? Ownership and responsibility. So at the end of the day, when you're talking about blaming, but you're projecting the ownership and the responsibility to somebody else rather than yourself, that's when the blame game starts.
And I'm going to try to give a couple of examples. I'm going to start with one that goes to teaching, but please understand, when I give an example of teaching, if you're a business manager or a business owner, you can see yourself in the role as the teacher and the students being the role of your employees or your team or even your clients. And if you're not getting the results that you want to get, then what is it that you need to do? I taught for so many years, almost 20 of them, and it would frustrate the heck out of me when, we would try really hard as a team of, like, for example, I taught 8th grade, what was called academic block in my school district, and it was English and history combined. And we would try to stay in pace with each other on the history units and how we were doing our different English and writing units, so that across the board, kids were working on those same things. But of course, each teacher would bring to the table their own set of skills, their own way of teaching. If I went through an entire unit and then did my assessment at the end, which might have been a written test, a bubble-in test, it might have been a paper they wrote, it might have been a project they completed, and I was completely disappointed in the bulk of the product, whether it's a test score or a project or a paper, and I had 30 kids do a project and 25 to 28 of them disappointed in their results, the blame game is, well, these stupid kids just can't learn anything. They don't listen. They're not trying hard enough. They miss the point.
Maybe it's not the kids.
Yeah, to me, if one or two or three kids aren't getting it, like you have some low test scores in the class, that's one or two or three kids not doing their homework, not studying for the exam, not preparing for their project. And you can individually do consequences with those kids. Okay, let's take a look at what you did to prepare for this. But when you have the bulk of your class not get it, it's about the blame game, and it's about taking personal responsibility as a leader, because obviously if I'm not seeing the results I thought I was going to see, I didn't teach it very well. I didn't get the information out there very well. I'm a business owner. I didn't do the training very well. If none of my sales, if my team isn't selling what they're supposed to sell, if they're not having the results that we anticipate.
Customer service feedback is a negative, or whatever the case may be, you need to make sure that you take that responsibility.
If you see it across the board, then it's leading in a way that choices as a leader need to be evaluated. When it's one-offs, then it is obviously maybe that team member that needs a little bit of reconstructing and understanding their consequences. And I think that's important. So that's one way that I think the blame game can be fixed. But let's talk about that generation out there that takes no responsibility and likes to blame.
You might be familiar with a generation called the millennial generation, and we have a couple of them.
Well, yeah, we birthed a couple of those.
In our family, and these are kids. What age would they be right now?
Well, I would say there is a 25-ish to 28-ish, all the way up to about
35,
40 to 45.
Yeah, in that range. So you're seeing them in a lot of different positions now. A lot of companies. Some get it, and some don't get it. And what I mean by that is, when Colin's talking about the blame game, some take personal responsibility and they take opportunities to improve and become better. Some are like Teflon, and nothing sticks on them, and they never made a mistake in their life, and they just kind of walk through life as it's your fault, their fault, the economy's fault, the business fault, the government's fault. They blame everybody else rather than themselves.
And that comes from a way that they were led as children. Honestly, we over rewarded an entire generation.
Yep.
And maybe that's just our take on it. And if you're listening to this or watching this and you don't agree, that's okay. You don't have to agree with everything we say, but we see that because it's just super important. If you've always been given the out, like everybody got a reward just for participating, then there was no need to really push yourself to a certain level. And if your parents always hovered over and helicoptered you and made sure you didn't burn yourself on the stove, and you didn't have to pay the traffic ticket when you got it, and you didn't have to worry about those things, then you don't automatically embed the value of choices into your daily life.
Yeah, so going back to raising kids in sports, for example, in our generation, when playing sports, whether it's soccer, football, baseball, whatever, you had the most valuable player, one person, MVP, and that one person got an award, got a trophy, and they exemplified the sport, sportsmanship, attitude, performance, everything that is the best characteristics, performing at their personal best. Mm-hmm. Then fast forward a couple decades, and you have the whole team gets a little reward, a little trophy for participating in the sport. So think about the messages being sent there. Everybody gets a trophy because you all participated. Does it mean they all participated at their personal best? Does it mean they took ownership? Is there an outstanding...
Does it mean that their choices in the process were? Yeah. Well, I'm going to go with the sports thing too, because another piece of that is boundaries. And when you play a sport...
there are boundaries in every sport.
Yeah, I mean, pick your, if you're playing, like our youngest Gracie was a very competitive soccer player.
Yeah.
When she played soccer, if the ball was out of bounds, she was the keeper for the team for many years. Yeah. She steps out of that goalie box with the ball in her hands, it's a penalty, right? So there were boundaries, and there were ways that, the goal itself is a boundary. If the ball went in it and she didn't stop it, it was a score. So there were boundaries. I played tennis when I was younger. Our two older kids played water polo. There were boundaries. There were where the ball was in and where the ball was out and what you could do. Boundaries are important, and they are a part of choices. And if we live in a society where there are no boundaries, there are no rights or wrongs, you don't have to worry about the choices you make, because we're going to just make sure you're always safe.
Yeah. Goes right back to what we talked about last
don't know,
episode,
it just-
which is
yeah.
about values, right? So that your yes be yes and your no be no, and there is a boundary between those two, right? So just like there's a boundary on a field, there's a boundary on the values on what you will do and what you won't do, and there are consequences on every choice that you make, because your life is a sum of all your consequences of all the choices you made, right? Your life is a sum of all the choices you made, and if you don't make good choices, you'll have bad consequences. If you do make good choices, you'll have great
And if you
rewards.
go out of bounds, that's part of not making a good choice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you kick the ball out of bounds. If you throw the ball out of bounds, if you step out of bounds, depending on the game you're playing, you can catch the football all day long. But if you do it outside the boundary line, well, then your team doesn't get that fair catch.
Right.
It's just so important. And those boundaries are part of the choices that we make. And it's super important whether we are talking about raising our children or we're talking about working with our employees, we're talking about running our businesses. We have to create zones and boundaries so that our choices are better. And so, going back to my book, Living by the Mantras, Common Sense Wisdom for an Extraordinary Life.
Extraordinary living.
It's all about these things we call mantras, and they're sayings, they're quotes, they're phrases to live by. And when we would tell our kids to keep their pants on, that meant make good choices. Okay, keep your pants on. And I shared that back in episode 1 when my son Tim was on here with me. Episode 1 of this series. He used to grab his little shorts and get so stressed out sitting in the little car seat. And we'd say, dude, just keep your pants on. It'll be fine.
Relax.
The choices will be okay. Mom and dad are making good ones. And it just turned into a phrase that meant something in our home. So it's important to choose mantras or values to live by, because they're what foundationally create who we are and how we have a better life. And in this particular series, we've been talking about the value, the mantra, keep your pants on, that's about choices and
making good choices. That's the
good
foundation.
choices. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to kind of wrap it up. Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it
Let's
up.
wrap this up.
Put a bow on it.
Let's put a bow on it. Let's send this package on our way. It's important to teach the value of choices to whoever we're working with. Whether you're listening to this as a parent, whether you're listening to this as a business owner, a manager, wherever you are, a teacher with your students. So we challenge you this week, take a look at where you are not creating those boundaries that allow for consequences in those that you lead. Okay, that's our first challenge to you this week.
And then also take a look at where you can actually take personal responsibility for something. For example, it could be as simple, let me give you a really simple example, taking out the trash. Trash is not taken out. Well, I just take out the trash. Take out the trash, get rid of it, and now everybody's happy, right? And whatever that is in your life, take that personal responsibility and make an action, facing it head on and walking the trash outside, put it in the trash can.
Mm-hmm. Choices and use examples for learning moments. Like he said, that opportunity to pull your child, your employee, your team member aside and have a conversation about, hey, this is what I see you're doing well. This is what I'm not seeing you're doing well. And how can we improve your choices? And the other thing is just take a look at yourself and where you know that you need to take a little look at what consequences you're causing in your life that might be different if you made better choices and you just simply kept your pants on. So if you like our podcast, we are so excited you've joined us here. Yeah. And if you would like to subscribe to wherever you're listening to, download our podcast, subscribe to our channel. You can go to livingbythemantras.com. You can find the book. You can begin to follow us on social media, and I share this in every episode. We are building our platform, and you're going to see that growing and changing in the coming weeks and months. Courses coming out, more good stuff to follow, and we really look forward to being able to help you have a better life right here at Living by the Mantras. So we'll see you next time.
Bye.